I was in the third year of my philosophy studies, and we had a course there that was called text. It was a strange kind of course. It meant just for an hour a professor chose a book, a classic of some sort, and we would just read it and talk about it. He'd do most of the talking. So we had this Summa Contra Gentiles of St. Thomas Aquinas. Teacher was Father William Barden, who was one of the great luminaries of that time and one of my great mentors in life. We started at the first chapter and just read through. We didn't get very far, but the reading was my introduction into St. Thomas and his way of doing theology. The subject from the beginning caught my fancy because it was about the wise one. What was it to be a wise person, and what was wisdom? And that was being set out as a kind of an ideal of life. What was even more fascinating though for me at the time was the way Thomas set about studying it and presenting it to his readers. I suppose I was expecting Thomas to be fairly dogmatic, to be laying down the law and telling you what you should think. But no, he wasn't telling you what you should think. He was telling you how to go about thinking about a subject like that. He was doing his own thinking, but not to force you to think the way he was doing, but to help you to think for yourself. Those Friday morning classes with the Summa Contra Gentiles and my first contact with St. Thomas opened up to me the prospect of becoming a wise one, but of doing it in Thomas's way, that is to say, by being helped to think for myself. We had a student magazine in Tallaght called The Watchman when I was a student. And in my third year of doing theology, the editor of the magazine was the genial Father Luke Dempsey, if you remember him. And Luke gave me a book to review for The Watchman. And it was a bit like the Contra Gentiles, a book that in many ways changed my life. It was this book called Life and Liturgy by French oratorian Louis Bouillet. I read that book in order to do a review of it at an important stage of my life. I was being packed off to France, to the Solchoir, to complete my studies. Now, I didn't have to go to Paris to become interested and passionate about the liturgy. We had a very good liturgical life in Tallaght. But what we didn't have was any kind of theological course on the liturgy. And that's what the Bouillet book gave to me at that time. It taught me to think about the liturgy, to think about it, as it were, from the inside out. I was very familiar with the outside of the liturgy, and we were doing it all, and it was wonderful. But what that book gave me was a look from the inside at the meaning and the import of all that we were doing. He taught me how to find in the scriptures and in the fathers the inner mystery of the liturgy, a study of the mysteries, and to find that, for example, in the covenant patterns of the Old Testament, proclamation of the word, and then the response of the covenant sacrifice, and in so many other features of the prayer, the Psalms, and the liturgical seasons. He taught me the deep meaning of these things, how the gathering of God's people, the liturgical assembly, was to be understood in terms of the Kahal Yahweh of the Old Testament and the Ecclesia of the New Testament. So all that helped me to see the liturgy from the inside out, as it were. And what it helped me to do too was to understand what was behind and underneath all the efforts, the pastoral efforts that were being made at the time, and I discovered them in France for a more pastoral, alive, participated liturgy. By learning from Bouillet how to think about the liturgy from the inside out, as it were, that was a life-changing experience for me. So this was the late 60s, and I was teaching theology in dogmatic theology, and I had a course on Christ. Now, we taught all our theology at that time from the Summa, and followed the order of the Summa, and I was very happy with that. But it gave me a problem. I believed at that time and always that all theology should begin with the scriptures. But Thomas didn't do that. He started with the great dogmas of the incarnation, the person and natures of Christ. And it was only at the end that he came then to bring you through what the gospel told you about the life, death and resurrection of Christ. So at the end. And that gave me a sort of an issue. At the time, there was a lot of discussion in theology about doing theology, and especially Christology, from above or from below. And the from below would be to do it from the scriptures and work your way up. The from above would be to start with the great dogmatic theological thinking and work your way down. And the impression was often given that you had to choose between these. And while I was fascinated by the from below people, sometimes I found they really didn't bother or thought the from above was irrelevant. And then I found this book by Wolfhard Pannenberg, Jesus, God and Man. And yes, Pannenberg did his Christology very much from below, from the scriptures and from what the Gospels had to say about Christ and thinking about that. But he did it in a way that brought you to the from above. And he had huge respect and interest in the from above and the great mystery of God and of the divine and the human in Christ. And so he showed me how the two could be brought together. And that influenced my teaching on that particular course and on everything else I ever did afterwards. I used to say to the students, what you have to do with St. Thomas is read him from the beginning to the end, but then read him from the end back to the beginning. Come down from above and come up from below, and Thomas does that. So there I was teaching theology with those two dimensions, from above and from below. And when you add that to the two dimensions I had got from Louis Bouillet, inside to the outside, there was a grand four-dimensional theology.